This is the story from the times when women were believed to be family properties, meant for exchange of gifts with them having no choice in marriage or whatsoever. But yet, our protagonist Satoko's father got a letter from her saying that she fell for a man she shouldn't have, but wherever she was, she wanted her father to know she was very happy. Now, going back to the time when it all started. One day in the Kirigaya family's household, a beautiful lady came out with an umbrella and the gardeners couldn't help but follow her trail with their eyes. One of them tried to tell the other to look less and work more, but both of them couldn't help it since that beautiful lady rarely leaves the house. So this was the only time they could worship her beauty of Lady Satoko. Satoko turned around after hearing those gardeners, and while they were losing count of their racing heartbeats in Satoko's presence, Satoko politely just thanked them for their hard work in the garden and walked towards the flowers she was growing. The gardeners were flustered in the presence of such a goddess-like beauty with a polite voice, whereas Satoko took a closer look at the flowers and she seemed happy to see how fascinating they were blooming. Then her little stepsister Mawako called out to Satoko and hugged her, asking what she was doing. Satoko replied she was thinking of taking care of flowers. Then Mawako reminded Satoko of her weak heart, so she should better rest at home because that would be trouble if Satoko becomes frail enough to pass out during her marriage interview tomorrow. Satoko asked her what she was talking about, to which Mawako replied she was talking about the marriage proposal from a guy named Hatano, and mentioned to Satoko that she doesn't have to be considerate of her. However, Mawako seemed a bit upset because she was the one Hatano chose. Then Mawako's friends tried to comfort her by telling Mawako was a famous beauty even at school, so she was sure to meet a new man soon. Then Satoko spoke up that her father turned down the marriage proposal, and Mawako asked her why, despite that Hatano guy being a famous nobleman even in this area. Mawako knew there were many rumors in town about how Satoko was the most beautiful woman in the world. But she didn't think their father was really insisting on marrying Satoko off to a prince in some foreign country. Mawako mentioned she did feel about all these expectations placed on Satoko, to which Satoko replied that she was happy instead that they expect things from her, and she does intend to marry the person that her father wanted for her. Mawako commented that was so empty, because political marriages were the norm for upper-class people like them, but commoners often marry for love. She added that she envied her because she also wanted to be in that kind of relationship with Hatano. Then Satoko made a serious face and told Mawako to skip the pleasantries and just say what she wanted to say to her. The look in Mawako's eyes changed as she asked Satoko if she was growing those flowers for their father's birthday tomorrow, as she heard it from the gardener. Mawako told her that kind of flattery was exactly what had stolen their father's affection, her destined partner, and everything from her. She said out loud having looks were everything in this world, so that was unavoidable though, and she tried to look upset. Then Satoko mentioned having heard Mawako say earlier to a friend that she would have refused the match if it weren't for his high-ranking family. Mawako got the taste of her own medicine, as Satoko added that even if she heard her wrong, Mawako still shouldn't say that she stole things from her, because in reality she was just not chosen. Mawako was pretty pissed to hear that. Then she smiled and said to Satoko that she didn't know the man who wanted to marry her. Thus, Mawako asked her if her heart could even take the shock, and Satoko didn't find it important to reply as she stood silent. Mawako kept saying further that the maid who cleans Satoko's room saw something, which was actually Satoko's will, which said that she wanted her corpse to be used for an autopsy and for research along with her diary to help the advancement of medical science. She wanted her funeral to be as small as possible, with as little money spent as possible. Mawako stated she almost cried when she first heard about it, so she asked Satoko to just stay in her room from now on, so that she could live as long as possible. But suddenly, Satoko held Mawako's mouth shut with her hands, and to Mawako's surprise, her face was looking terrifying as she told Mawako to remember one thing, that the marriage proposal was made not only by Hatano, but also by the madam, or his mother. So, Satoko was not only chosen for her looks, as she didn't only catch men's attention, but also the noble ladies by her posture, way of walking, manner of sitting, voice and expression. She was aware of how to make everything about her look elegant and beautiful, and her efforts paid off. Mawako asked her what part of this holding her cheek was elegant, seeing which, Satoko just withdrew her hand and said there was a mosquito on Mawako's face, so she squashed it. And now, she told her to listen well, that while she was out there skipping lessons and fooling around during her studies, she was busy keeping herself beautiful and cultured. Satoko had kept thinking about what a burden like her could do for the family, which was why she was trying to find her worth. So, the contents of the will that the maid saw were things that she thought she could contribute to. Miwako told her she was just acting tough, to which Satoko replied she doesn't care if Miwako messes with her, but Miwako should worry about herself more. Miwako asked her what was she trying to say by that. Satoko told her that Hatano might actually have felt the same way with her, but his mother didn't seem to approve of Miwako marriage, and the reason for it was pretty obvious even to her, because other than Miwako's looks, everything about her was at rock bottom. Miwako asked her annoyed about what she just said. Then Satoko just stated that she would never choose someone like Miwako if she was Hatano's mother, because with Miwako's kind of personality, it seemed impossible to be married to her for the rest of his life. With that being said, Satoko wished her luck to try her hardest, after which Miwako got mad as she walked away telling Satoko that she would tell about this. Satoko didn't care whatever she was going to do, but suddenly she felt a sting in her heart and wondered if she just pushed herself a little too much there. She figured that she should get inside the house, so Satoko was going inside when she saw Miwako complaining to her mother about Satoko. Miwako's mother, or Satoko's stepmother, gave her an annoyed and hateful look. Satoko recalled that her father remarried the moment she lost her mother when she was born, and right now there were 4 of them living together with Miwako, who was born from his father and stepmother. And that wasn't all of her problems, because Satoko had been sickly ever since she was born and the doctors said that she wouldn't live long. However, she believed that marriage was a woman's happiness, and women of age desperately try to polish themselves, as they struggle to secure a marriage proposal from a man of reputable family background. One of the places they could meet was at school, and it makes sense for Miwako to be upset with Satoko because she was blessed with an opportunity to get married despite not attending school. She understood where she was coming from, and as she entered the house, the person who hated her even more than Miwako was her stepmother. She thought of Satoko as someone who ruined Miwako's marriage, and after all this, Satoko's only ally in this family was her father. Her father asked her if she and Miwako had a fight again, to which Satoko smiled as she asked who told him. He replied hearing it from their gardener, Endo. Satoko stated they were not fighting, and it was just Miwako getting audacious, so Satoko just gave her a small scolding. Her father laughed it off and said Miwako had grown to be a very spoiled kid. Satoko smiled and she complained that Miwako gets on her nerves every time. Then her father told Satoko that another marriage proposal came to her, and this time it was from his friend's son. He stated there was nothing to critique about the man, so he asked if she could try and meet him. Satoko asked her father if he had told them about her condition, to which he said no, and Satoko continued that must be because the man's parents wouldn't want to meet her if they knew about it. She made it clear that she didn't want to deceive them, and her father was beginning to feel a little lost about what to do, because she would need both wealth and power in order to receive adequate medical care and have a happy life, since unfortunately, an old man like him couldn't protect her forever. And also, she was probably annoyed with how much he kept pushing her into these marriage talks, but in reality he just wanted her to be happy. So, with their Kirigaya family's honor and her good looks, they have received many marriage proposals, so he was sure she would meet a man who would love and protect Satoko. She began to feel embarrassed, so she requested her father to stop talking about her looks. Then he told Satoko that he didn't believe what the doctors said about her life expectancy, and no matter what, he believed that she would surely live. Satoko recalled the times when growing up, her father was the one who worried about her the most, and his only wish for her was to get married and be happy. But after all this time, she was sure there was no man out there who would want to marry a sick and burdensome woman like her. Her face began to look disappointed. Then her father apologized to her if he wasn't taking her feelings into consideration. Satoko stated he was completely alright. Then she asked her father if she could go to town for a little while. Her father was very worried to send her out because of her sickness, but she convinced him saying that the number of heartache has lessened for now, and she would also take her bodyguard Kaotaro along. Her father couldn't deny since she was insisting so much, so he told her to come back home safely after her errands. Satoko agreed to him and thus she went outside in the town with her bodyguard. It was joyful for her to be allowed to go to town again, and Kaotaro was glad for her. After that, she went to a shop and Kaotaro requested her to not go anywhere else until he comes back after doing a task given by Satoko's father. Satoko agreed to him, and he also told her to avoid the sun and conserve her strength as much as possible, and let him know if she felt unwell, he would carry her back on the way home. Satoko felt awkward from all that treatment, as if she was weak, which she was. Then Kotaro went ahead, hoping she wouldn't push herself. Satoko figured Kotaro was such a worrywart, and now she began to look for vases for the flowers she was growing. Then she thought of how beautiful those flowers looked while blooming, and on second thought she felt bad about plucking those flowers. She considered just showing them to her father while they were planted. However, it wouldn't look like a gift, but she couldn't just pluck them and leave them to die either. She also recalled her father's words, that he just really wanted her to be happy, and Satoko began to wonder if she would ever get a man who would accept her illness, and also a person her father would acknowledge. She hoped they would love each other if only there was someone like that. Satoko looked up in the sky, and thought she was getting greedy again, and she should stop having such dreams. She didn't even know if there was someone out there who could accept her illness. Then suddenly she got surrounded by 3 shady-looking guys, and this was the moment when Satoko's life changed completely. It was June 27th, and by the time Kotaro returned to where Satoko was, she was already kidnapped by strangers in broad daylight. And by the time it turned dark, Satoko found herself in a cell, and the boss of the kidnappers took a look at the girl, as he remarked she surely was a beautiful girl, but that would be wasted now. Satoko was trying to figure out what was up with them, as they blindfolded her and brought her somewhere far away, she didn't know where. Then the boss asked his men where a guy named Shinpei Goto was, to which the guy replied that Shinpei just came back and asked him to look behind. It was when Shinpei approached there and Satoko's eyes fell upon a danger which looked deadly just from one glance. That left her frightened, because this man was walking all soaked in blood which didn't seem to be of his own, and when he glanced her way with those empty eyes of his, Satoko was terrified with shivers down her spine. Then the boss of the gang asked Shinpei to rinse that blood off outside later, and asked if he did the job given before this one. Shinpei smiled as he affirmed he got the job done. And the boss laughed out loud in amazement, because even he and his gang couldn't kill that target for days. But this assassin Shinpei took only a day to finish the task. He was impressed to see Shinpei was really a legend like the rumors. Then he stated that he wasn't going to give him another job so soon. But he asked Shinpei if he could kill Satoko. Hearing that made Satoko's heartbeat slow and louder, while the boss told Shinpei that the client told them not to kill her right away, so he needed Shinpei to keep an eye on her for a while. He told Shinpei he was free to kill her by 9 p.m., and it felt like a waste to kill her, because he could earn a lot if he sold that woman. However, the boss was fine with this, since the client was pretty generous this time, so he told Shinpei to do a good job and he would be paid handsomely for that too. Shinpei took on the task with a deadly smile, leaving Satoko fear for her life. Now, the boss told his men that he knew they couldn't afford to buy a prostitute, but he wanted them to be on their best behavior and make sure not to lay a hand on that girl, Satoko, because otherwise Shinpei would really cut them into pieces if they dare try. After that, Shinpei washed his face with splashing water on his face, and once he was clean, he smiled at Satoko as if he was some good guy. But Satoko knew the truth and how dangerous he was. Then unexpectedly, while Shinpei was eating rice cake, he asked her if she wanted one as well, to which she just shook her head to deny it. Shinpei asked her out of curiosity if she did something to get killed, but Satoko couldn't speak anything since her mouth was closed. Shinpei took the key and opened the cell to walk up to her, and she didn't expect him to reach out his hands to remove the cloth closing her mouth. Shinpei remarked she was surely a beautiful woman, but she was as pale as a ghost. Satoko didn't get just what was up with this man, because he was supposed to be looking at her, but his eyes were utterly empty, which was making him out to be more scary. Then Shinpei asked her again about it, and Satoko replied she didn't do anything, so she thought there had been a misunderstanding or something. Thus she requested him to get her out of here, to which Shinpei replied that he couldn't do it because his job was to kill her, not free her. Satoko wondered what she should do now to escape, since she was about to be killed by 9 p.m. She asked what was the time right now, to which Shinpei replied he didn't know. Then Satoko asked him if there was any way he could help her. Shinpei told her if she had more money to hire him than the people here, he would switch to her side. Satoko got silent as he left outside for a bit, and she didn't think her situation would change if this man alone switched to her side. But she had a thought if he could help her sneak out. As he waited outside her cell for a response, Satoko thought she could get rescued once she was out on the street. So she told Shinpei to hire her, and even though she doesn't have money right now, she could pay him once she gets home. Shinpei responded with him not trusting that statement of hers, and even the value of her kimono doesn't seem to compare to the reward he was getting here, so he refused her offer because he wouldn't negotiate unless there was money in it. Satoko tried to negotiate, but then some of the gang members who kidnapped her came and asked Shinpei to give them the key. They told Satoko to not make a noise, and suddenly they put their hands on her kimono from shoulder. Satoko instantly began to shout at them to leave her, and those guys knew they were doing something that their boss told them not to. But still they didn't want to let a noble woman like this just go from right under their reach. And besides, she was going to die today anyway. Then Satoko put the thumb of one of those guys, and he reacted by hitting Satoko back while calling her wench. After that, those guys became pissed off at her and wanted to get back at her by having their way. Satoko couldn't do anything as she was in the worst situation, and she thought if she lost her chastity in a place like this, she doubted she could ever get married even if she made it back alive. She still had her last wish to return the favor to her father, so Satoko was trying her best to fight back for her dream to make her father witness her wedding. But to think that she would die without making her father happy, or she wouldn't be in anyone's heart either, she felt like she was born for nothing. Then Satoko saw Shinpei approaching with a smile and looking at her crying face. Shinpei told those gang members that he was told to cut up anyone who lays a hand on that woman. But those guys shouted at Shinpei to shut up. Shinpei asked if he could kindly follow his orders and cut them down, to which that guy replied with an annoyed expression that he dare not mock them just because people call him a legend. That guy wanted to scare Shinpei by saying he killed 10 people, but his arm got slashed in the middle of the sentence and fell on the floor. That guy realized his arm was gone before he knew it, while the other one lost his leg at the same time. Satoko witnessed their limbs being cut down, and those who were safe began pleading that they haven't done anything yet. But Shinpei wasn't so easygoing, as he told them that he would cut a limb for every time they had touched that woman. Satoko saw Shinpei cut their limbs without hesitation, and she bet he could kill a person so easily. She tried her best to calm down and think of a way to escape and live. Satoko wanted to survive no matter what, for which she needed to get this Shinpei guy on her side, to make him see her as someone worth keeping alive. She was ready to do anything, and when she wondered what worth she had, she recalled the time of her father saying their family's honor was bestowed upon by the heavens. So, she told Shinpei that she swore she was worth something, and he could have everything if he had her, as she made a proposal for him that they should get married. While Shinpei was busy keeping all of those perverts away from Satoko, Satoko said a statement which caught Shinpei's attention. He stopped and turned towards her when Satoko asked Shinpei to marry her. He looked at her. She looked messy, tied up yet confident. She looked him in the eye and told Shinpei that she had fallen for him. He gave her a shocking and confused look and then started laughing. He asked her not to be funny, and Satoko got frustrated by this reaction. She continued saying that her father was a count and she was the daughter of a noble man. She further told him that he would no longer have to worry about his wife if he marries her. She closed her eyes and apologized to her father in herself about using his honor like this. Shinpei asked Sakoto about how she fell for him. She was happy that her idea was now working, and then she told him that she likes the fact that he is punctual even if it's about when to kill her. She did not say that, but then she told him that she liked when he shared the rice ball with her so that she doesn't feel weak. Shinpei was just staring at her, and it made Sakoto feel that he was going to say no. Suddenly the master of gang members came from behind and was shocked to see the condition of his gang. He screamed and asked Shinpei in disbelief about what and why he had done all of this. Shinpei casually told him that these people tried to rape the women, so he chopped their limbs off. After hearing this, Sakoto told herself to be careful of this man. The master came near the employees and scolded them as he told them to touch that woman. One of the employees with no limbs tried to clarify himself by saying that they were always going to kill that girl, so it wouldn't have been a wrong thing. The master asked everyone to keep their mouths shut as it was the only way to be fine. Employees standing at the back started whispering that they have never been caught before this, and then they turned and gave a deadly stare to Sakoto as she was the reason for all of this. Shinpei came near Sakoto and lifted her on her back and told everyone that he was asked to keep her unharmed until execution time and he will do his job right. He stood on the window and jumped off the window while holding Sakoto. The master was yelling at him and Sakoto was shocked to see whatever Shinpei was doing. He looked so carefree when they were falling off the window, while Sakoto was screaming on top of her lungs. They rustled and Shinpei landed cleanly, whereas Sakoto got stuck at the branch of the tree. He looked at her and said that he is glad that she is alive, and then he carried her on his back and started walking. He stated that he wanted to continue where they left out, so he started walking faster. Sakoto realized that he was talking about the marriage bait, so she told him that if he helps her, she will return the favor by marrying him. He smiled and asked if it's a marriage of convenience. She agreed in her mind and said to herself that he is the one who wants money. While Shinpei was putting her down, she told him that they don't have to get married if he does not want to, so she asked if there was anything else she could do for her in return. Shinpei smiled and looked at her, and thought about what she just said, and suddenly so many people surrounded them. It was his master and his people. They came running towards both of them while cursing them. She looked back and thought that these people were already there, so it was impossible for them to escape. He looked at those people just like he always does, very casually, and then asked Sakoto if they can make a deal now. Sakoto was shocked by this, but then she asked what the deal was about. Shinpei smiled and bent his head a little bit and asked her to kiss him while pointing towards his lip with his finger. She looked at him blankly and sass, trying to process the word kiss. And then Shinpei explains that if she is in love with him, then what is wrong in kissing him? Those people started running faster, and then Shinpei took his sword out to fight with them, and he told her again that they are going to marry, but she said that she still needs to keep her chastity until she gets married. She thought that he might be testing her, but then Shinpei asked if keeping her chastity is more than her life, and then he started fighting with the people. He made some people fly in the air with his moves and used his sword to injure them. He passionately killed person after person. A very tall and bulky guy stood in front of Sakoto with a sword near her eyes, and when he was going to harm her, Shinpei held his hair and killed that person by inserting a sword straight on his heart. The blood was all over Shinpei's face, and then he smiled and told her that she can say no if she wants. The man whom he killed was lying dead on the floor, and she asked him about what would happen if she said no. He smiled again and told her that he will kill her at the scheduled time if she says no. He continued on killing people with his sword and taking everyone's lives. He was shedding their blood as if it was nothing. Whereas Sakoto was still trying to make her decision, and suddenly everything seemed quiet to her and she could hear her heart thumping really fast. She could hear nothing but her heartbeat, and that violent heartbeat of hers was telling her to run away, as she could see Shinpei kill people ruthlessly and slitting their throats and limbs off. So many people were lying on the ground and blood all over, and Shinpei looked like a complete monster with blood on his and all over his body. He stared at her and could see her shuddering. He told her that if she's that reluctant, then she did not really feel bad for him. She walked slowly towards him, but then Shinpei saw her being hesitant, so he asked her if she's scared of him, as it may be the first time of her seeing so much of blood. And also, he said that it must be nice how rich people are so carefree and don't have to do like threatening work. He said that she doesn't have to worry about the future, whereas Sakoto was still thinking about the condition which he had put in order to save her. But little did she know that she didn't have any choice. But then she stopped him and she opened the bag which she was carrying and took out a handkerchief from the bag. She walked near him and cleaned his face with the handkerchief. She looked straight into his eyes while he was trying to figure out what she was doing, and then she held his face and gave him a soft and gentle kiss on his lips. While her face was near to his, she asked him to pardon her, as it's not hygienic for someone else's blood to be on the mouth. She told him that she doesn't have a future and has a bad heart, so she doesn't have much time left and she lives each day preparing for the end. And when she said all of this, she saw straight in his eyes. She told him that she does find him scary, but for her overcoming fear is easy. While she was expressing her feelings to him, a person came running from her back to kill her, and Shinpei took out his sword and killed him in the first go. He then hugged her and asked her to marry him. She looked at him with eyes wide open, and Shinpei gave her a smile. Even his teeth were visible, and said that he never thought that kissing after slashing people is that best. He told her that all the women he has been with have run away the moment he has told him about his job, and it was hard for him to kill those women. But he did not have a choice since he had to keep things a secret. He hugged her more closely and told her that she was the one who chose him and accepted him, and he told her that he has a feeling that she will accept him no matter what. He was sure that this was destiny. He then grabbed her hand and told her that his love is kind of heavy, but he will always make her happy, as he rubbed her hand on his cheeks like a kid. But then there was blood on her hands as well. The blood of so many people which he killed just for her and her love. But those hands stained with blood made her pretty scared, so she quickly withdrew her hands and asked Shinpei if he really planned on marrying her. He said that was indeed correct, which put her in doubt about what exactly was this man thinking. Because how could a killer want to get married, even though he was scary enough to kill people with a smile? Then Shinpei told her these people were persistent, so they should go before another set of pursuers catch up to them. Then Satoko asked him who exactly wanted her dead, to which Shinpei replied that he simply received orders to kill her, and was told nothing more. He asked her if she couldn't think of anyone who might want her gone, and Satoko immediately thought about his stepmother and Mawako. However, she couldn't be sure and thought there was no way they would go this far. She just replied it could be some scoundrel who wanted the ransom money. Then Shinpei figured they should get out of here in any case. unless she wanted them to go back to their hideout and kill them all. Satoko told him they don't need to do something that dangerous, and she figured it would be safer if they called the police and helped her go home. She assured them everything so they wouldn't arrest Shinpei as well. Shinpei asked her if she thought it would be that easy, because she wasn't just some woman and whoever targeted her did so knowing full well she was the daughter of a count. So, they might even check her house and ambush her, and thus he suggested to her they should just elope and build a small house to live happily with just the two of them. He asked her if that was okay with an insane smile, while Satoko wondered how serious he was about that. Then she felt a sting in her heart and she turned back, which made Shinpei ask if her chest hurt. She denied it, while thinking that they might get caught by their pursuers on the way home, and wondered if going with this man would really be safe. Then Shinpei suggested to her they should stay the night around here, and she asked in shock if he was for real. Shinpei explained it was because they would hide until tomorrow. Satoko said they should get out of here as soon as possible, to which he replied this area wasn't easy to get out of, and he had a new plan, about which he would tell her all night long later. Satoko wasn't so okay with the idea, but currently this man was the only one she could rely on, in this unknown place and situation. Thus she followed what he suggested and they went to a place, while she prepared herself in case this man tried to trick her. Shinpei got her to a room and said they would be staying here. He asked her how she was feeling, to which she replied she was alright, and questioned him what was their plan for tomorrow. But Shinpei didn't reply to that and just said he was all sticky, so he needed to take a bath before talking. He asked her if they should take a bath together, hearing that Satoko was left all speechless as she asked him what again. Shinpei mentioned she was also covered in dirt, and since they were a couple, he didn't see a problem in bathing together. Satoko told him she was alright and not that dirty either. Then Shinpei told her he didn't mind going alone to bathe, but he questioned if she would be okay here alone. And that was how he ended up taking a bath with Satoko just sitting in some corner for her safety. He asked her if she could just join him, but Satoko thought who would want to share a bath with a hitman. She ended up tagging along, and now she thought she should have just sought out help while Shinpei was busy bathing. But she was scared to go out alone since their pursuers might be nearby. Then Shinpei mentioned he never asked for her name, which put Satoko in confusion if she should give a fake name. However, she knew it was easy to find out things about her, and it was possible that he might even know it already and just wanted to test her. Thus, she figured she should be honest and told him her name was Satoko. Shinpei remarked it was quite elegant and a wonderful name, and it was perfect for her. He introduced himself as well, then asked her how old she was. Satoko replied she was 16, and Shinpei stated she was 2 years younger than her. Now then, Shinpei got out of the bath and asked Satoko to wash his back, which flustered her enough to exclaim why she would wash his back. Shinpei mentioned she had been cautious of him this whole time, so he just wanted to make her feel relaxed around him as quickly as possible. Satoko figured she would be crazy if she wasn't cautious considering the horrific thing she just saw. Then Shinpei repeated that she didn't want to return the favor of him saving her. She mumbled in reply that she wouldn't have been in trouble if these people didn't kidnap her in the first place. Shinpei laughed it off, while Satoko knew that she would have been dead if it wasn't for this man, and she doesn't want to spoil his mood by refusing now. Thus she asked him if he would at least close his eyes while she scrubbed his back. Shinpei did so and he kept giving feedback of good scrubbing on his back by Satoko. But when she made it harder, he asked her to ease down or it would scrape his skin. Satoko knew that, but she was trying not to look at his back. But when she did so, she noticed there were scars. Satoko could see all those were terrible wounds, which nobody could think that they belonged to an 18-year-old. She wondered when he started doing this kind of job, but to her surprise, Shinpei suggested they should switch. He asked her to take a seat on a dry spot. Hearing that, Satoko was all surprised and Shinpei told her even if she couldn't tell, she was pretty dirty right now. So, after he made her sit down, he began cleaning her hands gently while she wondered what was going on here. Shinpei also wiped a little around her neck and smiled looking at her blushing. Then he asked her if she didn't get any marriage proposals despite her money and looks. Satoko replied she turned them down due to her condition, which made Shinpei ask out of curiosity, "How long exactly does she have left?" Satoko replied she doesn't really know how long she has, but the doctors said she wouldn't make it to adulthood. Shinpei stated her being 16 already counts as an adult, and she even seems full of energy too. Then he added that she might not be afraid of him because her death was near anyway, so he felt obliged to thank her for her illness. Satoko felt that it was insensitive of him to say that, and he wasn't even trying to be considerate about her illness. And when she thought about it, she realized she hadn't told a man about her condition other than her family members. Then she stopped her thoughts by convincing herself there was no way she would get married to this guy. She knew that her father would faint if she introduced a hitman to him, and she needed to do something before this got out of hand. Next, Shinpei suggested they should wash her hairs as well, so he brought a bucket to gently wash Satoko's hairs. And when she said she could do it herself, Shinpei said it was alright and he would want to wash her hairs like this every day once they were married. And also she could wash his kimono after he finishes his work, although her hands might become rough if it's stained every day. And in those times, he would hold her hand every night while sleeping next to her. He has never been happy like that before, and he doesn't know when he will die. But when he does, Shinpei was sure he was bound to go to hell, but asked Satoko if she would follow him as his wife. Satoko felt chills from his expression and statements like that. Then she quickly withdrew her hands and stated that even if she asked him to marry her, she thought it would be best for them to assume that their opinions wouldn't matter until her father approved of them. Shinpei told her why they would need her father's permission, since she wasn't going back anyway. Satoko told him not to decide that by himself, as she wouldn't abandon her family. Shinpei got close to the state wasn't she the one who asked him to marry her. Satoko got quiet and Shinpei felt her silence, so he got up and wondered what he was supposed to do if they didn't get married. He guessed that he would just die then, which came out as a surprise to her. She asked why that was, and he replied that even if he keeps living, it never gets any easier, and he was already sick of it. Satoko asked if he was mocking her, and he questioned her back if that was how she took that provocation. Satoko was pissed because he was making fun of life, which she was dying to wish more of. Then they heard some people sound outside their gate, which seemed to be the pursuers. Satoko noticed they were already here, and she still wanted to say what Shinpei needed to hear right now, but she knew she was done for once he was gone. She began to feel a little annoyed because he kept giving her choices that he knew she couldn't refuse, like the kiss and the bath, as if he was confirming her love for him. Shinpei asked her if she didn't want him to die, and Satoko couldn't get hold of what a nasty man he was. She requested Shinpei to help her because he was the only one she could rely on, and she also added there was no husband who would abandon his wife, while actually inside she was now determined to also use Shinpei for her own convenience. Shinpei was amused by her request and he hugged her, saying that he of course wouldn't leave her behind and protect her forever. Satoko thanked him for that. Then she proceeded to respond to his question by saying that he could feel free to kill himself if that was what he wanted, as she wouldn't stop him once they have safely gotten out of here. She wasn't confident that after they marry life would become any easier like he wanted it to be anyway, so she made a request if she could have his heart once he died, which left Shinpei a bit confused about what to feel here. Meanwhile, the pursuers ambushed the place and they heard voices from Shinpei's room and decided to attack all at once. But after they charged into the room all at once, they didn't see anyone inside, but suddenly one of the guys got his neck broken by Shinpei, who had already killed a bunch of men from behind. He left a warning that people shouldn't bring their swords inside the inn, as it sullies the place, and with that done, he asked the hiding Satoko to follow him as they need to move to a different inn before pursuers regroup. He carried her on shoulders while running, and this time she recalled the moment when she requested Shinpei to give his heart to her. Satoko figured Shinpei helped her in the end, but she wondered what he thought of what she said earlier. Now that they were far enough, Shinpei put her down since they would catch the attention of people if he walked while carrying her. It was when Satoko noticed there was a pretty vibrant town behind her, and the sight was so captivating that she was amazed by it. She thought she was brought somewhere unsafe, but she was completely wrong, as there were glamorous women and beautiful vermilion buildings around here. It was as if she wandered into a different world, and Shinpei mentioned she seemed to be all over the place. She quickly composed her expression and asked where they were exactly, to which Shinpei replied they were on a certain island, where there were first-class prostitutes from red light districts all over Japan selling themselves on this island. It was called Tenio Island, and Satoko heard this name for the first time. Shinpei told her she was brought here blindfolded, so she never noticed the place. Then Shinpei got called out by a bunch of women and they seemed to be pleased to see him. They asked Shinpei to drop by their place from time to time, but Shinpei replied he had prior plans. They told him they would be quick, and Shinpei began to seem distracted by them intentionally as he glanced at Satoko. She told him to wait and they don't have time for this, but Shinpei told her to let him indulge in this for just a little, because after all he might end up dead once he gets out of here. His words sounded purely sarcastic to Satoko and she was beginning to be pissed off by him. But when she tried to approach him, one of the women slapped her hand saying she was so persistent, which resulted in Satoko falling to the ground. Then the woman began to state how she could fall from just one slap on her hand, and she accused Satoko of trying to get Shinpei's attention. Satoko didn't think that she would fall on her bottom in front of people, and they were all watching and laughing at her now. She felt awful while thinking that she wouldn't be treated like this if she was at the Kirigaya estate, and now thinking back on it, she realized that she has never left their estate alone. It made her wonder what would happen if even Shinpei abandons her in this situation, which suddenly made her feel scared. She hoped there was nothing to worry about, and she just needed to explain her situation, which was sure to help out. She then asked the same woman who pushed her to help her out, because there was someone after her life. She asked her what she was talking about, and questioned if she killed one of her clients. Satoko stated she got it wrong, and in reality she was abducted and taken all the way here. She asked who, but Satoko didn't know who they were. After hearing that woman called Satoko annoying, which left Satoko shocked, and she began to ask for help from others more desperately. She assured people they would get a reward for helping her and begged them to just listen to her story. But she was shoved back by them and they called her a beggar and filthy for being covered in dust. Satoko realized nobody here would hear her out, and she began to wonder what to do now to make them listen. That woman then mocked Satoko, saying she was surprised to see Satoko survived living like that. Satoko figured she was never in danger, because there was always someone who would protect her, and until now she always had someone she could rely on, which was frustrating in itself to think she was this powerless by herself. Satoko began to hate how weak she was, then she recalled her father's words that he was sure she would live long. Satoko composed herself as she stood back up, and a guy came telling the woman from before to not be hard on this poor girl, who seemed to have been locked out of her brothel as punishment for misbehaving. He offered a bowl of rice to Satoko out of pity, but even so he told her she could just perform a dance in exchange for this rice. That woman understood the guy was making fun of her, so she followed up by sitting down alone and told Satoko to hurry up. Then she intentionally dropped the bowl of rice on the ground, and began to pretend to have done it mistakenly. She claimed to be sorry, but Satoko went and picked up that rice to eat it all by hand. That guy and woman were disgusted to look at her munching on that filthy rice, whereas Satoko cleaned her mouth after eating and thanked them for the food. She then corrected her hair and replied with a smile that she would surely return the favor for the rice, since she didn't know when they could meet again. Satoko asked that woman if she could lend her fan to her, after which Satoko used that fan and caught the attention of people around the place with her beautiful dance. She knew that she couldn't end things here, because if she didn't have the power to survive, then she would start to improve now, and make sure to get away from this place no matter what. Shinpei was watching how she handled things by herself, while Satoko was determined to go back home and get married, so that she would finally be useful to the Kirigaya household for the first time. She was surrounded by a lot of people who seemed to be attracted by her dance, and in the middle of it, she gave a glance towards Shinpei, which intrigued him even more as more people gathered and clapped for the wonderful dance of Satoko. She respectfully accepted everyone's praises, while that woman from before was annoyed by it. Whereas, the guys from all around the place began to ask her what her name was and which show she works at. It was when Shinpei came and hugged her close, saying they should go now. After that, they went out of the town for a bit and Shinpei told her that he knew those people earlier, and since he was born and raised here, everyone recognizes his face. Satoko told him she never asked that, and he noticed she was mad at him. Satoko asked him why he went with those girls, to which he replied that he just figured he would talk with them. Satoko called him a liar, and said he was just looking forward to seeing how she would react. Shinpei agreed that it was true, then Satoko told him that she didn't care if he wasn't the one helping her, because there were even some men who tried to approach her earlier. She didn't get why she had to jest, as it could lead to trouble by causing him to abandon her. But she also didn't want this to keep happening in the future, so she needed to end things once and for all here. Then Shinpei held her shoulders and denied it wasn't like that. He apologized, claiming it was his fault for teasing her, for which he was really sorry, and he wasn't okay with Satoko being rescued by anyone other than him. That was why he said sorry to her and hoped she would forgive him. Satoko was pretty startled by the sudden change in him, and she wondered what was going on. Or was he being desperate or lying again? She could tell he was clearly being different from before, and now he was really dejected. Then Shinpei held her hand and began guiding her somewhere for a while, until they reached a place in the woods, where Satoko saw so many fireflies around the place. He asked her if she had ever seen fireflies before, to which she denied and claimed this was her first time. She found this sight unbelievable, as if she was being embraced by light and enjoying this. Shinpei was glad she seemed to be feeling better, and he figured rich ladies don't go to places like this. He asked her if this makes her happy, to which she replied it does make her glad. Then Shinpei placed her hand on his heart out of nowhere. Satoko didn't get what was going on with him. Then Shinpei brought up the time she was talking about whether he would give her his heart or not, and make it clear to her that his heart already belongs to her, and she could think of his body as her tool. Shinpei doesn't care now even if she treats him roughly, because he genuinely likes her, and he requested her to not ever leave his side. Satoko could feel his big and bony hands were taking care to hold her gently, and the brothel sceneries, her surprising courageous behavior, and this view were all something she never would have gotten to experience if it wasn't for Shinpei. He might always be doing crazy things, but she couldn't come to hate him, which made her think for a moment that they might have even gotten along if he wasn't a hitman. Now, Shinpei told her out of nowhere they should look at fireflies every day once they get out of here. It made her heart skip a beat. Then she changed the topic to what he was saying about a plan for them to leave this island. Shinpei recalled that and told her that this place was actually outside of the law, which was the reason why he could carry a sword around here freely. And to make things tough, there was only one way for a woman to leave this island. She asked him what that was, and to her surprise, he replied that it was to be a prostitute. So he got down on his knees to tell her calmly that he wanted Satoko to be a prostitute. Meanwhile, at the Kirigaya family's house, the minister was hitting his son, or Satoko's bodyguard, Kaotaro, for messing up by taking his eyes off Satoko, which led her to be kidnapped. He was scared to the spine thinking about what would happen to his Ogawa household if something were to happen to Lady Satoko. Then the Lord entered the room and told the minister to let Kaotaro be, but the minister wasn't feeling at any ease. Then Kaotaro spoke up that he went to the kimono shop to run an errand for the Lord while Satoko was shopping for a flower vase. Suddenly, the owner of the kimono shop got entangled with some scoundrels, whereas Satoko disappeared while Kaotaro was dealing with the trouble at kimono shop. He stated this seemed to be a planned crime, rather than simply being a mere coincidence, but he still didn't deny that everything was his fault. Kaotaro had no excuses, and he thought this torture was nothing compared to the sin he committed. He requested to give him something more painful than death, and the minister was very much up for making sure Kaotaro won't leave this room again. But Kaotaro had one condition or a favor to ask of the Lord, and when the Lord asked what it was, Kaotaro humbly asked him to untie this rope, and he assured him that he would definitely accept his punishment later. Minister told him what he was spouting about, then Kaotaro declared that before he took any more punishment, he would make sure to bring Lady Satoko back home. Meanwhile, back to the island, Shinpei brought Satoko to a watchtower after defeating some guards, to show her that this was the top of the island. She saw throughout the island from this spot, and other than this island, there was just ocean surrounding the place. Shinpei showed her how tight the security was on the port, and explained to her that this island was thorough, which means one couldn't just come and go as they please. Aside from that, there was only one way for a woman to escape safely, which was to become a prostitute and be taken in by a wealthy client, as that client was her ticket out of here. He added that this island was reserved for men of power like politicians, policemen, and so on, who find it difficult to fool around with women because of the Western religious trend. It continues to thrive under the watchful eye of the government, and thus women only get to leave this place as either bought prostitutes or as corpses. This place wouldn't hesitate to kill someone if it meant protecting their secret, so the safest thing to do was to play along. He assured her that he would join her later, but Satoko was feeling uneasy about all this. She stated that she understood what he was saying, but she had no experience conversing with men, and yet he was telling her that she would need to share a bed with a man she didn't know. Shinpei refused that wasn't the case, and he would kill that man if that happens. He told her she was beautiful, and she was sure to become any man's favorite even if she just met and talked with them. Satoko stated it couldn't be that easy, and asked if there was really no other solution, which made him ask her if she wanted to swim her way out of here. Shinpei described they were 3 miles away from the mainland, and it might be summer, but the seawater right now was cold enough that a human wouldn't last long in it. He considered trying to steal a boat, but there was only one docking place on this island, and there were always a couple of lookouts with anchors, so even if they find one boat, he bet that would be unusable. Satoko didn't want to believe it, but this was reality. She went silent and Shinpei asked her if she was scared. Satoko replied that a lot of things happened all at once, and it made her wish that all of this would just be a dream. She wasn't fully convinced before that she was on an island, and now she was glad that he brought her here to look at the reality. She looked at him, while thinking how she was blown away by the situation she was in. But she wasn't just going to sit by and wait for more information or rescue to come find her. Thus she told Shinpei to guide her to a brothel, and after that tough decision, Shinpei brought her to one of the many brothels on this island. She asked him if this was the place, as it looked different than others, to which Shinpei replied that this was the lowest grade brothel, one that would hide even a traveler. Satoko doubted if he could even find men of power to take advantage of her, and he assured her not to worry. She became quiet when she saw him yawning and said sorry to him for yesterday. He asked her what she was sorry for, mentioning if it was for throwing a bucket at him when he brought her clothes, or was this because she didn't let him sleep in the same bed. Satoko stated that sorry was for making him guard them the whole night, for which Satoko told her don't worry about it, as he likes this bashful side of hers. After that, the owner of this brothel greeted Shinpei formally with a smile, and Shinpei pointed out to Satoko to tell him she was the girl mentioned before. Satoko said it was nice to meet Yamamoto, while Yamamoto was left amazed as he wouldn't have thought she would look so beautiful. Then Shinpei told Satoko that earlier when he was talking to some girls, he was actually relaying his message to Yamamoto through them, to let him know that Shinpei would bring a new girl here. Now, the same 3 girls from before came and Satoko recognized their faces from yesterday. However, they looked at him with stares and she didn't think she was welcome here, and by the looks of it, she figured that nobody seemed to be afraid of Shinpei, and he appeared to be liked instead, which make her think that these people perhaps don't know about Shinpei being a hitman. She wondered then who exactly was Shinpei. Then the lady owner of the brothel called them out and said they needed to do something about Satoko's filthy kimono. After some time, Satoko came down after being ready, and when Shinpei looked at her, she was looking extremely beautiful and out of this world. He complimented her as beautiful, while Satoko thought, why does she have to be getting compliments in a place like this? But either way, it made her glad to be complimented, and Shinpei hugged her saying it hurts his heart to think that she was going to another man. She was flustered by the sudden hug. Then more suddenly, he asked her if they should go somewhere isolated, as he wanted her all to himself for the rest of their lives. She was creeped out by his behavior. Then Shinpei figured they had to do this brothel thing for the sake of their future. He asked her to follow him, and when she asked where to, Shinpei shocked her by saying he would lead her to her client. Satoko didn't expect it to be right away, and in a way she asked him what kind of person this client was. Shinpei stated the name of this client was Nidobe, and he was a police commissioner. Satoko was more nervous after hearing that, while Shinpei stated it was indeed crazy good for her first client. But there was a slight problem, which was that this client Nidobe was banned from almost every brothel in the island. From being banned, Satoko imagined this man might be someone really dangerous. Then Shinpei told her not to be worried, as this guy was just kind of a bad drunk. But this place doesn't serve alcohol during the day, so he figured it would be fine. Satoko then thought and suggested she could try knowing this man a little better by time. But Shinpei made it clear that she wouldn't be meeting him again after this, so they only have one chance to execute the plan. Because this man doesn't always come here, and he was just going to look for a different prostitute if Satoko dials to pique his interest. Satoko felt even more pressured to know she would get only one chance, and Shinpei hated to break it to her, but it was also rare to find a guest with a good family background at a lowly brothel like this. So, if she were to fail, she would have to give up and live the rest of her life hiding from her pursuers on this island. However, Shinpei didn't think it would be that bad either, since she would be in constant danger, so he might become someone Satoko desperately needed. Satoko was unsettled to hear that. Then she tightened her fist and asked him when he would find a woman attractive. Shinpei was surprised by this out-of-the-blue question. Then he mentioned feeling the happiest when she accepted him even after she learned that he was a killer, so for him an attractive woman would be an open-minded one. Satoko figured she needed to focus on the open-minded nature and thought that as the son of a police commissioner, this client must have a lot of restrictions and limitations in his daily life, so he might be using alcohol to relieve some stress. So, she was thinking of getting to know each other better while being open-minded, to get him to open up to her. Shinpei noticed her being really serious and told her that she didn't need to get that worked up, as she would be fine because she was his wife at the end of the day. But Satoko told him they should forget about that for now, which made Shinpei sad, and he asked what she meant. Satoko explained that there was no way this plan would work if she had another man in mind, so she only wanted to think about this person right now. And besides, she also had a lot on her mind to sort out. Then Shinpei fell down and he mentioned that he didn't think he was up for this plan anymore, and on second thought, he would just kill this guy, as they might be better off living on this island for the rest of their lives. But Satoko shouted at his face to shut up for a second, and reminded him he was the one who told her to be a prostitute, so sacrifices were necessary if he wanted to achieve something. She told him to not try solving everything by force, and take more responsibility for his words for once and leave this to her, while making sure to not get in her way. She was determined to leave this island alive, and then get married. After that, she walked ahead towards the room, whereas Shinpei's shocked face quickly turned into that of being amazed, as he thought he just got proposed to. He felt nice to hear that while she was upset, and Yamamoto was looking at him being all cautious. He assured Shinpei that they were also being cautious about things with this client. But the other women seemed to have some plans, while Satoko entered the room and gulped in tension. She was really nervous because the client could be someone scary, but she slapped her cheeks to become composed, since she couldn't get cold feet and needed to make this man like her, regardless of what kind of person he was. She opened the gate and introduced herself respectfully as the new hire, Satoko, with her head lowered. Then the client just asked her to come in, and to her surprise, the client turned out to be decent looking instead of some scary guy. Satoko was relieved as she closed the door and thought about where she should sit. Then Nidobe told her not to sit in that corner and asked her to come closer, but then his hand hit the teacup which spilled it over the plate. Satoko asked him if he was okay, and she cleaned the spilled tea, which was when Nidobe told her that he gets nervous when he is in front of someone beautiful. Satoko observed that guy and said to herself that this might actually work, while Shinpei was having fun in his own little world after being proposed to. Now, inside the room, Satoko served the tea properly again, while Nidobe was sitting quietly and she could tell he was nervous. She assumed he would be used to women, but if he actually was not, then she might have a real chance. Then Nidobe called her out and asked how long she had been working here. She replied this was actually her first day, and the conversation died out to silence again. Satoko was troubled by their conversation ending like that, and she began to wonder how she could possibly think she had a chance when she herself had no experience talking with men. Then Nidobe told her there was no need to be nervous, and after looking at her face, he guessed he was the nervous one here. He figured that might be because he has a very restrictive job, so this was the only place where he could find solace, which was why he hoped that the prostitutes he visited would also have fun when they were with him, even though he was shy as he claimed that he had never been in a proper relationship with a woman, so he didn't really know what he was supposed to do. Nidobe claimed he was certain this was also why he behaved weirdly while he was drinking and having fun, which had led all the shops to shun him. He thought of it as an embarrassing story, and after hearing this, Satoko was impressed by what an honest person he was, and she couldn't really imagine a man like this getting banned. Then Satoko said that she herself wasn't used to conversing with men, and truth be told, she had worried when she got this job. But what Nidobe said made her a little relieved, for which she thanked her with a smile on her face that caught Nidobe's interest, and he said that was good to know. He then asked if he could ask another question about why she was working at this shop, because there was something noble about her looks and gestures, which was as if she didn't quite fit in with this place. Satoko wondered how she should explain this, as it would be bad if he realized that she was an outsider. Then on second thought, she considered that since Nidobe's father was a police commissioner, he must also have a job that was related to his father's work. She wondered if Nidobe would help her if she explained her situation to him. Nidobe spoke up that he actually worked with the police, so he could try and lend some help if she was in trouble. Satoko got a hope that she might be able to get off this island without needing to be bought, so she asked Nidobe if he would please listen to her story. After that, she told everything about being kidnapped and brought here. Then Nidobe asked her if that was all true. Satoko said yes with a sad expression, and she added that she was told that it was impossible for a woman to leave this island unless a client buys them out. She asked Nidobe if that was true, to which he replied with a hint of doubt that it was indeed the only way, because even the police couldn't interfere with what happens on this island. So, he said sorry to her for his words that he could help, and Satoko felt down as she expected this response, but it was still upsetting. But then Nidobe asked her if that option was not good, as he requested her to let him buy her, and that way she could leave this island. Satoko's face brightened up after hearing that, and she thanked him while promising to reimburse his money once she got home. But Nidobe said that wasn't what he wanted, because he had come to like her and wished for Satoko to become his legal wife, as he believed he fell for her at first sight. Satoko was flustered to hear that, and she replied that she appreciated how he felt, But she wasn't sure if Nidob's parents would approve of this, since she had let him know that she was sick and the doctors said she wouldn't live much longer. Then Nidob said he would convince her parents, and they could also see all the doctors in the country to see if her illness was really an incurable illness. He held her hands while claiming that he wanted to protect her with his own hands, but at that moment someone was reaching out for their sword. Whereas, Satoko thought if she were to marry someone of Nidob's family status, she was sure her father would be happy, and right now she doesn't have a reason to turn him down. But then the image of Shinpei flashed before her eyes, which made her hesitant. She wondered what would happen to Shinpei, because he wanted them to elope together once they leave this island. She wondered if he would come after Nidob's life, because of which she should inform Nidob if that was the case, because that way the police could protect Nidob from him. She thought that she only asked him to marry her so she could survive, and since he was vile, she didn't have to worry about him. But even so, Satoko couldn't help but think if it would be right to deceive the man who helped her. Then she heard a very low sound from up, and when Satoko looked up, she was shocked to see that Shinpei was right there on the ceiling with a very pretty but deadly and angry smile. She was feeling so scared inside after seeing him unexpectedly, while she wondered what he was doing here, and just how long he had been there. When Nidob tried to turn his eyes where she was looking, Satoko covered his eyes with her hands, saying it was nothing. Nidob asked if there was a bug, as he heard they appear often here. Whereas, this bug was a really deadly one who wanted to draw his sword for a clean slash on Nidob, while Satoko found herself in a really problematic situation. While she kept distracting Nidob from looking there, saying there was a mouse. She gestured to Shinpei not to worry and everything was okay, so he should leave. But Shinpei responded with the gesture that he would watch from there. Satoko was really pissed, but she was trying her best to distract Nidob, who went to find and catch the mouse in the corner of the room. Satoko waved at him to come to her, while she kept Nidob away, saying the mouse might be far away. Shinpei came down and she whispered angrily at him to leave this to her, to which he replied that he was worried, so he couldn't just leave her alone in a room with a man to make sure not to let him lay a hand on her. He requested her to let him be here and he would make sure not to be found. But Satoko refused. Then Shinpei promised not to kill that guy. Satoko then told him he was distracting her, so she wanted him to leave, which left Shinpei in mixed thoughts that this was their future after all. So he agreed to leave the room, but first he asked her to lend her hand, and when she did, Shinpei held her hands and told her it wasn't Nidob who would protect her but he himself will. After saying that, Satoko was again reminded how protective Shinpei was, as she looked at him while Nidob came back to her saying he couldn't find the mouse. Satoko said sorry to him for distraction. Then Nidob said they should go back to their conversation and asked her what about getting married. Satoko got quiet and Nidob noticed her expression. He said sorry to her and claimed he should take this slow since they just met. He then took a sip of tea and suddenly he felt something and fell down on the floor. Satoko tried calling out his name, while around somewhere else, those other 3 women from the same brothel confessed they switched the water to alcohol and made sure for it to look like the cook messed up. She figured that their newbie Satoko wouldn't be out of the room once Nidob's personality comes out thanks to the alcohol. Meanwhile, Satoko was trying to help Nidob to sit, but he held her hand and got above her, with a very different part of him coming out with a clearly dangerously high wish of preying on Satoko. Nidob put his glasses to the side and looked at Satoko with a creepy smile. Then suddenly, she got carried by the collar by Nidob, while she wondered what just happened, as if Nidob was completely different from earlier. She recalled Shinpei saying Nidob was a bad drunk, and Satoko realized that tea must have been alcohol. But she found it hard to believe, since Shinpei told her this place doesn't serve alcohol during the day. But these thoughts aside, Nidob put her in the bed like some object and he wondered how long it had been since he last had fun while it was bright out. Satoko tried to tell her he seemed drunk and needed to control himself, but Nidob said how could he, because he grew up with strict parents, and it was like this was another personality talking. He told Satoko that Nidob grew up without experiencing alcohol or women, and he didn't know how to vent his desires. So he developed another personality when he felt like he was going to explode. And then this personality of his led him to this island, and now he claimed to soothe Satoko's body and spirit in his place, while she was free to blame the people around Nidob for making him so uptight. Now, he asked her to strip. Satoko was helpless as Nidob said she would be dealing with him every night once they get married. But before that, she would have to first satisfy him here. Satoko was confused and tried to stay tough, but then Nidob began to force her to strip. She kept telling him to stop, and then Nidob ended up looking at her chest, which had a huge scar in the middle. He asked her what that scar was, and called her hideous for that. Then Nidob recalled they must be from an operation, and during this Satoko kept telling him to let her go. Nidobe told her having scars was brutal for a woman, since a man would lose interest in her after she gets naked and he sees that. He turned her to face the other way, and after seeing that she had no scar on her back, he figured there was no choice than spending the night with her facing the other way. He told her she has good looks, along with Kirigaya's family name, so he would keep his word about buying her. But Satoko kept quiet, which made him repeat that he would still be her, so she should show some appreciation because he was in a position where he could buy a high-end prostitute, and yet he was choosing her. And also this place seemed to attract prostitutes that have their own circumstances, as there was a woman who was ugly and couldn't get a client, one who attempted a double suicide with her partner, and another one who killed her client, and even a woman who had burks all over her body. Nidobe claimed he was sick of all of them, mere defective products, and nevertheless whenever he brought up the idea of buying one of them, they would quickly do everything to get his favor. He found it funny seeing them scramble to do whatever he asked of them, and he don't know if they wanted to see their parents of their man. But if they let those people off this island, it would ruin the public morals of Japan, and filth like them should be kept in the trash can. Then he came back to the topic of buying her, and he, the son of a police commissioner, would get married to her. He asked her if she felt blessed, and also mentioned it wasn't so bad for him anyway because whether he would be called son of a police commissioner or son-in-law of Earl Kirigaya, this island might get lenient with them given either of those titles. And next time, he might even be able to buy all the prostitutes on this island, and when that happens, he wouldn't mind buying the whole island while he was at it. Satoko thought that she would be willing to marry any man as long as they have a good name, in order to give her father peace of mind. But now after this, she made it clear to Nidobe that she was surely in no position to be selective about who she marry given her condition, but she would like to decline his offer of buying her. Hearing this made Nidobe pissed off, and he told her to quit jesting, as how could a woman like her reject the deal, as there was no way a woman like her who had lived a wealthy life could endure living here. He repeated she would be out of this place as soon as she married her, so she should better quit putting on a brave front and just accept it. Satoko was sure her father wouldn't want this, so she couldn't allow a lowly person to be part of the Kirigaya household. Nidobe lost his temper after hearing that. Then he called her a wench as he began to strangle her with his hands. He told her if she was unaware that someone who was sick like her was the most effective product here. He asked her just who she thought she was talking to, and said she should kneel and beg for forgiveness. At that time, Shinpei's voice came from the door as he told Satoko that he came to help her. Nidobe was scared as he asked who he was, or was he part of the staff here. Nidobe questioned how he entered the room, and Satoko was relieved to see him. In an instant, Shinpei was right behind Nidobe with his sword scratching the behind of his right elbow, and Shinpei warned him to get those filthy hands off her. Nidobe shouted in pain from that cut, and Shinpei hugged Satoko while making it clear to Nidobe just like he hurt her, he should give up on her. Nidobe was pissed off, then he warned them that he would kill both of them, by telling everyone that there was an intruder on this island. Shinpei began walking with his sword and Satoko noticed that, while Nidobe was scared for his life as he exclaimed at Shinpei to back off because he was about to kill him. But then Satoko stopped Shinpei and she asked him to wait. But Shinpei was really angry right now as he strangled Nidobe with his one hand, while Satoko was trying to get him to hold on. Shinpei said it was a shame that he couldn't think of any way to get off this island other than using this guy. And other than that, he figured he also got to take down the rascal who hurt his wife. Nidobe was beginning to lose consciousness and Satoko told him repeatedly to stop because Nidobe would die at this rate. But suddenly, Nidobe used his pistol and shot Shinpei around his shoulder. He fell down right in front of Satoko's eyes as they witnessed Shinpei going down with that shot. Nidobe breathed heavily as he laughed at Shinpei, who might not be able to get up easily with that wound, and he told Shinpei that he would kill this woman if she came any closer. Satoko was trying to release herself and she called out Shinpei's name, asking him to at least say something. Whereas, the owner of the brothel wondered what was that gunshot. Then her husband told her not to mind it, because they were told to never enter that room even if they hear a gunshot or a scream, to make sure they wouldn't be in Shinpei's way as he smiled and stood back up, to try protecting his beloved one and get her to fall more deeply in love with him, even though he didn't plan this situation. After seeing him standing up despite the gunshot, Nidobe was terrified, whereas Shinpei took a good look at his wound and he acted like it really hurt enough that he felt like he was going to die from the pain. But he assured Satoko to not worry, as he promised to rescue her, even if this guy shot every part of Shinpei's body, because after all, he was her husband. Nidobe asked Shinpei what he was blabbering about, then Shinpei began walking towards Nidobe fearlessly. Nidobe warned him if he come any closer, Satoko would suffer for that. Then Shinpei stated that he left the room because he was told that he was in the way. He tried his best to be patient until the agreement to buy Satoko was finalized, and he think that people who hurt his wife should be erased from this world. But he did not kill Nido because Satoko told him not to. He told Satoko that he did it all for her, while this side of him scared the crap out of Nidobe as he shouted at Shinpei what was wrong with him, as he was creepy. Nidobe raised his pistol at Shinpei, but then Satoko snatched the pistol from him and ran away. Nidobe called her a wench, but then his hairs were caught by Shinpei, followed by a knee straight to his jaw which sent him flying straight to the door. After that, Shinpei picked him up with a tie and slapped him every time he touched Satoko and hurted her. Satoko looked at Shinpei punishing that guy while making sure not to kill him. Then she told him this was enough as Nidobe was already unconscious now. But Shinpei told her this wasn't enough because he wanted to make him regret what he did to Satoko. He assured Satoko that he wouldn't kill Nidobe, but still she tried to stop him, but Shinpei started hitting Nidobe again. Satoko raised her voice saying if he could even hear her, while Shinpei's punches seemed to be getting tougher. She knew something must be done, so Satoko looked around and saw a lamp. Then she hit Shinpei with it herself. Shinpei was shocked by that, and when he looked at her, Satoko repeated what she said to him to just stop it. She was kind of scared inside because the lamp was tough. Then she noticed Shinpei was bleeding. She quickly apologized for hitting him too hard, whereas Shinpei got down on the floor and pretended that this bleeding was hurting a lot. He asked Satoko to wipe the blood off his head with her handkerchief, and she asked him what about the part where he was shot. Shinpei told her to forget about that and wipe his forehead nicely. Satoko wiped the blood from Satoko, who was enjoying his lap pillow, and she felt like Nidobe actually had it worse than Shinpei despite what happened. She turned to look at Shinpei and thanked him for rescuing her, after which Shinpei asked her if she had fallen deeper for him. Satoko replied bluntly with a direct no, after hearing which, Shinpei looked shocked and a bit furious, and she told him it wasn't what he thought, but she meant to say what he did was too much. And not just she couldn't be happy with the way he does things, she thinks no one would be. She didn't know how to explain it to him given his job, but she wanted him to know that violence was not okay, and hitting people was an inherently barbaric act. So, he couldn't use violence unless he was defending himself. Shinpei mentioned she did hit him with the lantern though. Then Satoko added one more thing in anger, that Shinpei shouldn't move when he was shot. She looked at all the blood, which had spread because he kept moving around. She made a worried face while looking at him, and asked what she was going to do if he died. Shinpei was moved by her expression and worried, and he asked if she didn't want him to die. Satoko told him she wouldn't answer that, and Shinpei got up thinking things seemed to be different from how he imagined. Then Satoko told him she would be going to call for help, so she requested him to lie down. By the time of evening, everything settled with Nidobe bowing down while apologizing to Satoko and Shinpei, as he truly wanted to make up for doing such an inhumane act towards her. Satoko asked if he really wanted to make up for it. She asked him if he could do her a favor. Nidobe instantly agreed to do it. Then Satoko told him that she wanted him to tell the Kirigaya household that Satoko was trapped on an inescapable island, but she said that she would make it back alive. Nidobe understood, and he assured to make sure they get the message. Then he asked Shinpei how his gunshot wound was, to which Shinpei replied it hurts, and he wouldn't be able to use his shoulder for a while. However, Shinpei told Nidobe that he was grateful to him, since this brothel would keep operating thanks to him. In other way, Shinpei was giving Nidobe a warning, that if something like this happens again, he would kill him next time, so he could feel free to come back if he wanted. Nidobe was terrified of this warning, and he assured to keep his promise and left in a hurry, dashing away. Shinpei giggled back. Then Satoko asked him how his wound was. Shinpei told her not to worry, since he was used to getting shot, which she didn't find that surprising after being with him for a while. Now, she said sorry to him for messing this up, and Shinpei told her she didn't do anything wrong, and someone must have pulled a prank by switching Nidobe's drink to alcohol. Although Satoko didn't expect Nidobe would have a gun, Shinpei stated that this island doesn't really allow guns, which made him wonder if he bribed a boatman. Shinpei then asked Satoko how she was feeling, and if her wound hurt from how roughly Nidobe handled her. She got anxious thinking how much he heard about her wound, or if he had already seen her scar. Shinpei observed her insecurity, then he called her out and showed how he was completely covered with scars all over his body. Satoko was startled by that and asked why he was naked, to which Shinpei replied that he was full of wounds, so compared to his wounds, she shouldn't be bothered with hers. Satoko felt somewhat relieved, and she laughed thinking this was also pleasing to him in his own way. She recalls having this wound hidden since she was young, but for some reason she felt different about it now, and she told Shinpei that her wound was bigger and deeper compared to his, and said that was cool enough. She was feeling alright with showing her wound to this man, as if it was her medal, and Shinpei was glad to see she was feeling better. He compared that he did have more wounds though, and Satoko told him there was no need to compete. And anyway, they need to think of another way to get out of here. Shinpei figured she was right, and she coughed a little as she suggested they might find another way if they ask around. Shinpei replied that it would be dangerous to move around too much. Then he asked her if she was okay. But Satoko's coughs were looking bad and she said once it starts, it doesn't stop. And next, Shinpei was left worried when he saw her hand had blood from the coughs, and when she was about to fall down from overexhaustion. He caught her while she fell unconscious. Satoko had a dream about her childhood memory of the time when she used to look at the children playing with each other. But whenever she asked her stepmother if she could go outside for a short moment, she straight up refused, saying she couldn't go out because her fever only went down 3 days ago. Satoko was excited to go even if she would just watch Mawako playing with others. Then her stepmother replied rudely that Satoko really didn't understand why she was brought into this world. She told Satoko that she was Kirigeya household's property and a tool for the family, so as a burden to this house, she should at least learn to do her part and never ever think she has freedom. Then Satoko woke up suddenly from the nightmare and she saw Shinpei was there calling out her name. He was relieved to see her waking up and asked how she was feeling. Satoko asked him where they were, to which he replied that he brought her to one of the brothel rooms after she had suddenly passed out. Satoko felt like her memories after they sent off Nido were fuzzy. Then she learned from Shinpei that she had been asleep for 3 days, so he was worried. Satoko was surprised to hear it has been 3 days, and she apologized to him because she not only failed to have someone but her, she even passed out. Shinpei told her it was okay, since it was the husband's duty to take care of his sick wife. He then mentioned seeing her cry in her sleep and asked if she had a nightmare. She replied that she had a dream about her childhood and told him that she was weaker back then compared to how she was now. And when her condition worsened, nobody would let her out of the house for a while, even after she got better. She thought that she would die alone in her room and it scared her. Shinpei thought of something, and he told her he would be right back. Soon, he returned with breathing heavily and some dirt on him along with a bag. He closed the lights of the room, making her wonder why. And then Shinpei opened the bag, which turned out to be filled with fireflies. They roamed around the room and sparkled it from their lights, making Satoko feel all amazed. Shinpei stated he caught them by the riverbank, and now it was as if she was outdoors, even if she was in here. Shinpei wanted to make her feel free wherever she was, and Satoko felt really happy by his genuine consideration. She found him a strange man, as she always thought he was scary, and yet he was very kind and caring at the same time. Then she told him that fireflies stay in the water from the time they are born, so they would die rather quickly without water. They do shine beautifully, but she didn't want them to suffer inside a room, while Shinpei thought the one that dimmed down must be weak. When Satoko saw it, she told Shinpei that she was really grateful he did this, but she asked him to set them free because they don't have much time left to live. So, rather than this cramped place, she wanted them to shine somewhere they wanted. Satoko opened the window to free them and Shinpei remarked she was so nice, and then he told her about his idea. That once they leave here, they should build a house somewhere where they could see fireflies every year. He hoped they would have a big window, where she could see them even when she was sick, and like that, they would be near a river, so during the summer they could dive in the water and catch fish. Satoko stayed. She had never dove into a river, and Shinpei remarked she really was a rich lady. After which she mentioned that she wanted to try it once. Shinpei said then it was decided if she wanted that, and since he wanted to be with her as much as possible, he thought of trying to reduce the amount of work. Satoko asked him if he was going to work as a hitman for the rest of his life, to which he agreed because he believed he would have nothing if he was not a hitman, and they would need money to make her happy too. Satoko got quiet. Then she mentioned that Shinpei always thinks about her future, but she wanted to know what he wanted for himself, and was he really okay with leaving his hometown just for marriage. Shinpei replied he didn't think much about this island. Then she asked why he was even working as a hitman. Shinpei wondered about that, and thought it was because he was suited for the job. Satoko asked him about his parents, to which he replied that he didn't know his father, and his mother was a prostitute who was killed by her client when he was young. And the man who killed her was the first person Shinpei killed. He still remembers vividly of that guy struggling in agony, while Shinpei felt nice from it. Satoko looked at him with somewhat empty eyes, then he asked her if she thought he was pitiful. He asked her to comfort him if that was the case, and added that his life was sad, but he could forget about it if she comforted him. Then Satoko felt something off about his words, and she asked him if he had been using such antics to deceive himself all these years. Shinpei got a little surprised by that, and he asked her what she meant, to which Satoko replied that she could see that the one who wanted to get off this island most was him. She stated he could try to deny it, but it wouldn't change the fact that she was right. So, she suggests they should look for another way to leave this place and get out of here together and be free. Shinpei smiled and confirmed if she would leave with him, to which she agreed, while thinking inside even though it would be until she got to this island. Shinpei to her it made him happy to hear that. Thus once they recover, they would have to come up with a new plan. Satoko then noticed his bandage got loose, and Shinpei mentioned it was so hard to fix this. Satoko offered to help him out, and so she began to fix his bandages near the window. Shinpei was happy and Satoko could see he was in a good mood. She told him he has always been protecting her, so she felt sorry that she could only do this much in return. Satoko asked him to let her know if there was anything else she could do for him. Shinpei told her that he didn't really need something in return, but he just wished to be treated by her like this if he got injured again. Satoko told him to be careful not to injure himself, and Shinpei teasingly said he would be careful. She assured him that she would take care of him, and Shinpei returned in response with a smile. She felt her heartbeat acting up to his smile, and thought it was frustrating that this was the only thing she found to do for him when he stayed next to her even when he was injured. She felt like she would be a burden if she couldn't be useful to him. Then Shinpei asked her if they were done, and as thanks for treating his wounds, he gave her a hug for the help. She was startled by a sudden hug, while Shinpei told her that he was so happy and just being here next to her like this was more than enough. Then he carried her out of the blue and said that since she was still recovering, she shouldn't move too much and he would bring her to bed. Satoko was okay with that, and she felt it was strange that she felt weirdly conscious of him. Shinpei told her she was so light, and when Satoko denied that wasn't true, Shinpei said she was the lightest girl he had ever carried. Satoko mentioned that doesn't make her happy. Then Shinpei mentioned it was his first time hearing that, because the others were happy when he told them they were light. Satoko went quiet after hearing that, and after Shinpei carried her to the bed, she thanked him while mentioning he seemed to be used to this. Shinpei replied that it wasn't exactly like that, but she felt a little off. Then out of nowhere, she asked Shinpei if he wanted to marry her because he was in love with her. He replied with a yes, but she wanted to know which part of her does he love. Shinpei loved everything about her, especially the part of her openly accepting him. Now, Satoko understood why he suddenly accepted her marriage proposal, because this man wasn't actually in love with her. So she asked him if he would be okay with anyone as long as they accept him. Shinpei refused and said he wanted to be married only to her. Then she asked him if he could love someone enough to want to marry them within a few days of meeting them. She stated, what does a hitman like him know about love anyway? And she thought the love he had for her was the same love he had for children or animals. Satoko knew inside what she was saying was crazy, and she wasn't even in love with this man, yet she was using his lack of genuine feelings against him. But then Shinpei asked her back what she knows about love, which was pretty unexpected for Satoko, so she struggled to reply and ended up saying it should be a mutual thing. Now, she went back to sleep telling him not to mention marriage so easily, and Shinpei asked her why she was mad, or if he said something to upset her. Satoko refused because she wasn't mad and just needed to sleep. Shinpei told her he was in love with her, but she stayed quiet pretending to sleep, and then he asked her if they were getting married. Satoko replied who knows about that, which got Shinpei extremely angry right away. He asked her again if they were getting married or not, or was she lying when she said they would get married. He told her to remember his words, that if she broke her promise, then he and she would just have to separate. Then Satoko told him to just let her rest. After hearing that, Shinpei got silent and quietly went outside the room. Meanwhile, Satoko was feeling frustrated, thinking what was she doing, since that man didn't do anything wrong, but she couldn't help but feel upset for some reason. And she was so angry with him right now, with her being unaware of just what was happening to her. Next day, she woke up feeling better and refreshed, and when she went to the window, she heard good morning wishes from Shinpei as he came here to ask her if she could have breakfast. Satoko replied she could eat only a little, and he remarked that was good. Then he mentioned that he also had good news, that they could get on a boat and safely leave the island. Satoko was enchanted by the good news, as Shinpei told her he bribed the boatman and they would be leaving in 10 days from now. Satoko asked if that was true, to which he replied it wasn't easy, since it took him days to persuade the guy. Satoko remembers him saying before that she couldn't escape unless someone buys her, and yet she wondered if there was this option. Was it really going to be safe? On second thought, she considered all options have their dangers, so she should be happy about this. Satoko thanked Shinpei for arranging this, and he told her that her pursuers were loitering around the island, so they need to stay here for 10 days since it was dangerous for a woman to be outside of a brothel since it would attract attention. He then went to get her food and Satoko said she would come with him. Then Shinpei told her she still needed some rest, and she couldn't say no to him when he was caring like this. Shinpei assured her that she could rely on him more. Then he went to get food, while Satoko was left blushing and she noticed he was acting like usual while she was the only one feeling conscious here, and being stupid. She had mistakenly thought before that Shinpei was really in love with her, and for a moment, her feelings wavered. She wondered why she was thinking about that hitman, instead of focusing on her goal to marry a suitable person once she got out of here. She was glad that she slept through the night and came back to her senses, to understand that she couldn't have that kind of relationship with that man. First, she walked outside with the intention to apologize to him for her actions yesterday, but then she saw some other women talking to Shinpei, and they were all happy to see him this early in the morning. Satoko became expressionless, whereas Shinpei saw her and said he brought her food. But he was surprised when Satoko just passed beside him and said she was going to the restroom with a somewhat annoyed face. Shinpei didn't get what happened, but he reminded her that the restroom was the other way. After that, a woman named Ai came to Satoko and stated she was entrusted to become Satoko's instructor for the time being. Ai told Satoko she could ask her anything, and Satoko claimed it was nice to meet her. Shinpei was trying to tell her she didn't have to move around, but Satoko exclaimed at him saying she didn't want to stay here for free, and her loud voice made him sad, so he walked ahead hoping she wouldn't push herself. Satoko was bummed when she noticed that she lashed out at him again, and Ai asked her if there was something between her and Shinpei. Satoko got surprised, while Ai stated having heard there were some rumors about Sayako and Shinpei, which they couldn't believe because it was rare for Shinpei to come here, and now he even brought a beautiful woman and stayed with her for several nights. Satoko said that there was nothing between them, and he only introduced her to this shop. She couldn't just tell her that they were actually on the run. Then Ai told her that Shinpei was actually worried about Satoko when she was asleep for days and he kept staying up all night nursing her. He could have just asked someone else to do that job, yet he did it for her by himself. Satoko then asked Ai about who was Shinpei go to this shop, or rather who was he to this island. Ai was surprised to see Satoko came with him without knowing who he was, and she told her that Shinpei actually guards all the brothels on this island. He punishes troublesome clients and protects the women, and there are quite a few prostitutes who admire him. Ai added that he was an amazing person, who was looked up by both shop owners and by those in power on the island. He was a kind man, but there were also scary rumors about him. So, she thought just looking at Shinpei from afar was enough for her, and Satoko realized that just like she expected, no one knew that Shinpei was a hitman. Ai also told her Shinpei never had a special relationship with any prostitute, and yet he was so passionate about Satoko. Satoko wasn't sure if it was passionate, but she couldn't deny that was how it seemed to people. She knew she wasn't the most knowledgeable person about life and all that, but any woman would misunderstand his actions. Then another woman from this place asked Satoko what happened to her clothes, or did she stop getting clients. They mentioned that things didn't go disastrous for her when Nitobe's tea got switched to alcohol. Then one of them asked Satoko how she was feeling, and she replied tightly that she was all better, but they teased her saying it must be nice getting nursed by Shinpei. She wished she was also born sickly. Then Satoko asked her why she would say that. Then that woman suddenly held Satoko and told her to stop being sly. She told her to stop getting close to Shinpei, because they proclaimed that Yukari standing behind them was alone Shinpei's favorite. She added that Satoko was only at this shop because she had nowhere else to go, so she should be obedient unless she wanted to get hurt. Ai tried to calm down those girls by mentioning they still have tasks to do, but she got stared at and Yukari stepped on her yukata. She then mentioned in Ai's ears that her man hadn't contacted her lately, and he actually told Yukari that he wanted to spend the night with her. She figured his waist must have hurt from having someone so heavy in him, and the other girls laughed at her. Ai was about to cry, then Satoko stepped up in the middle and asked those girls if they were done here, since they still have tasks to do. Those girls, Ai and Yukari, were all surprised by Satoko's brave move. Then Yukari smiled and said sorry for coming in the way. She went ahead while telling Satoko that this outfit of a cleaning maid suits her better, as she left along with the other two girls. Satoko heard them saying mean things like Satoko acts like she was weak, and they wonder why Shinpei was so interested in her. Yukari believed Satoko was merely a fly, And that aside, AI mentioned that it was embarrassing of her to almost cry there. She then introduced those girls' names as Yukari, Hatsune, and Sawarabi, and Yukari was the shop's second most popular woman who often steals other people's clients. However, AI believed that was her fault for being incompetent. Then Satoko told her that she had only experienced a little bit of this job, but she could tell it was very tough. And for that, she has nothing but respect for her considering she was still working in this industry. AI was cheered up by her encouraging words, and she was happy to hear that from someone as beautiful as Satoko. AI then smiled and said the lifestyle here wasn't fun, but she had someone she wanted to be with once her contract was over. That was why she was trying her best here, and Satoko got that AI had someone she wanted to be with. AI felt shy as she giggled, and seeing her like that, Satoko just asked AI if being with the person she loves made her happy. AI was surprised by her question, and Satoko herself was shocked why she asked that. She said sorry to AI and she didn't mean it. Then AI asked her if she could call Satoko by name, and after she agreed she could, AI asked her if she had ever fallen for someone. Satoko denied she hadn't, after which AI said as for her, she was very happy and it was like she didn't even mind dying as long as she was in her man's arms. Satoko was moved by that much dedication of AI, and to think she would be that happy which was visible clearly to her eyes. Satoko began to think something as well. Then AI told Satoko she was different from how she imagined, because she thought Satoko was scary at first. But she actually turned out to be an innocent girl who had never fallen in love. She hoped they could get along while she was working here, and Satoko was extremely happy with it as long as AI was okay with her. AI smiled and said she couldn't get any clients because of her appearance, and she doesn't have any standing in this shop either. But with Satoko here, she felt reassured and wished they would do their best to fulfill their dreams. Satoko noticed AI's case was different from the marriage she wanted, as AI purely wished to marry for love. She wanted her dream to come true, so she wished for AI to be happy and agreed they would indeed do their best here at work. AI thanked her and both of them seemed to get along well with each other. Now, AI told Satoko to watch out for those three girls from earlier, especially Yukari, since one couldn't tell what she might do once she was angry. She always had a strong temperament, but it worsened after Shinpei stopped sleeping with her. Satoko gave a confused glance, and AI realized Satoko didn't know that Shinpei used to be Yukari's lover. This came out pretty unexpectedly to Satoko, after which she went to work normally, but for some reason, she couldn't stop thinking that AI said before about Shinpei never having a special relationship with someone. But that raised the question if being lovers wasn't special enough. She recalled Shinpei did say that he grew up on this island, which wasn't particularly surprising given his environment. Then Sawarabi dropped some dirt from her smoke on purpose and told Satoko to clean this dust. Satoko didn't want to cause any trouble, so she went to wipe it, while thinking that each brothel had its own favorite girl, and Shinpei wanted to get married to her, which means he was supposed to cut ties with other girls. Sawarabi kept dropping dust here and there to annoy Satoko, while Satoko was used to dealing with people like these because of her stepmother. Then Sawarabi stepped in her way intentionally to make Satoko fall on the floor, and claimed it was a mistake. Satoko told her she should stop where she was going. Then Satoko noticed Sawarabi did have some pretty legs, and she wondered if Shinpei had this kind of temptation every day, then it would surely be hard on him not to give in once. Satoko quickly felt beat up for thinking about Shinpei, and on the second day, she passed it without much trouble. On the third day, those girls tried to cause trouble for her, and she managed it just fine, but on the fourth day she told the owner lady that her yukata was ruined. On the fifth day, she was doing her work when Shinpei came to help her out by carrying some of the laundry, and this sight made those three girls furious towards Satoko. The smile on Shinpei's face when he was with Satoko made Yukari anxious, so next time when he was alone treating his wound, Yukari entered his room and figured he would be here. She offered to treat his wounds if he just asked her, and she asked him if he was worried about something. Shinpei then asked her casually if she ever lived with someone, and Yukari thought Shinpei didn't sound like himself when he asked that. Shinpei claimed that he had never understood how people feel, and on top of that, understanding a woman was exceptionally difficult. Yukari didn't feel good about that, so she hugged him out of nowhere and said love is when touching each other like this makes their heart beat faster, and he could use his body to confirm each other's feelings. Shinpei just got the part that heart beats faster in love, then he noticed the sound of the door opening, and to his surprise it turned out to be Satoko, who saw him with another woman hugging him. It was yet to be known what development this sight would cause to Satoko, and her impression was blank. Then she shut the door back, leaving herself out. Yukari pretended it didn't seem to be good that she saw them, but she let Satoko stay out, while Yukari continued her conversation with Shinpei about the way to understand women's feelings. She asked him to tell how fast her heart was beating right now, and since he couldn't tell it through kimono, Yukari didn't mind if he tried feeling it directly as she loosened up her kimono. She told Shinpei to hurry and feel it, as she was getting cold, but Shinpei was thinking about Satoko and wasn't interested in whatever Yukari was saying. Yukari didn't like that, so she tried to insist on Shinpei saying he was surprisingly innocent. Then Shinpei asked Yukari if she knew who switched Nidobe's drink with alcohol, and Yukari replied she wasn't sure but she did hear some rumors about Nidobe going wild and getting rough with Satoko. Shinpei just stood up and asked her to tell him if she knew anything about the culprit. Then Yukari chuckled and said he was surely going out of his way for a mere prostitute. Shinpei dressed himself properly while making it clear to Yukari that he was going to marry Satoko, and this dropped on Yukari like a bomb. She asked again and Shinpei replied with a smile that he got proposed to, so that was why he just couldn't leave Satoko alone. After this, Yukari became desperate, so she stated that she didn't want to worry her, so she never told the truth that Nidobe had been rough with her for a long time now, and it was truly scary. She hoped if she only asked someone promptly to take action, so that Satoko might not have been hurt. But despite her attempts to gain his sympathy, Shinpei told her to just act quickly from now on and left the room. Yukari was extremely angry after how all her attempts to get with Shinpei failed. Meanwhile, Satoko was cleaning the bath while trying to convince herself that she didn't see anything, so she should calm down since that was nothing. However, she was being too rough and energetic in work, which made AI ask her if something happened. Satoko asked her what she meant, to which AI replied that Satoko seemed scary, so she wondered if something happened between Shinpei and Yukari. Satoko asked her how did she know that, to which AI replied that she saw Yukari going inside Shinpei's room earlier, after which Satoko said that she saw them embracing each other. AI was startled by that and she figured Satoko must have been surprised, but upon a closer look she mentioned Satoko seemed to be sad. Satoko quickly pretended a smile and said she wasn't sad, and just a little annoyed. AI asked her why she was annoyed, but that was something even Satoko herself wondered about. AI's eyes sparkled as she noticed something and told Satoko that she thought that Satoko was in love with Shinpei. Satoko asked what again. AI pointed out that Satoko didn't like it when Shinpei was with another girl. AI asked her if something like that had happened before, if she ever hated it when Shinpei mentioned another girl. Satoko recalled the moment when Shinpei was carrying her and mentioned other girls, which made her feel even more angry. But she denied it, whereas AI knew her guess was on the mark and she cheered for her. She told Satoko that falling in love was the happiest thing, as she kept thinking about that person until she lost track of time. And despite their line of work, AI believed that they still have the right to love people freely. Satoko got somewhat sad, as she said that she was not in love and her future was already decided. AI asked her what she meant, to which Satoko replied that the man she would marry was already decided. And when AI asked her if she loved this man, Satoko replied that she had never met him before. AI asked her if she was really okay with a political marriage like this, or couldn't she say no to that. And Satoko was sure she wouldn't say no because she was happy this way. AI remarked it was sad to marry without love, since people were supposed to be born free to live with the man they want. Satoko was sure that love was a wonderful thing, but now her emotions were unstable. However, she has decided to use up all her time and opportunities for the people she cares about. She realized this was the first time she had had a real conversation with a man, and she even asked for a favor from Shinpei. But now she felt pathetic thinking she messed it up by having some feelings, and at the same time, the owner lady came to ask just how long it would take them to clean because they need to open the shop. AI got nervous and she remembered that she needed to get changed, so she asked Satoko for a favor if she could go to the storage shed behind this building and get some firewood. Satoko was okay with that. Then suddenly she noticed Shinpei was sitting right behind her, and that scared the scream out of her. She asked Shinpei how long he had been here, to which he replied that he just got here and told her she shouldn't go out alone, so he would go with her. After that, they ended up going to the storage shed and Satoko found the firewood. She was feeling awkward and she wondered if it was because she saw Shinpei with Yukari like that. She was annoyed as he shouldn't just say that he was going to marry her when things were already going well between him and Yukari. She tried to lift the firewood but it was heavy, and Shinpei supported her and asked her to let him carry it. His usual care made her heart feel at ease, but she wanted to avoid being alone with Shinpei as much as possible. It was when she recalled AI's words that one loses track of time in love, and Satoko didn't want to let that happen. So, she began to head out first, but the door didn't open for her. Shinpei noticed it was odd, so he went and tried to open the door himself and realized it was actually locked from outside. Satoko was left speechless as she heard that both of them were now locked in this shed. Now, while inside the shed, Satoko was worried because the gate was working fine earlier, and yet now it seemed to have gotten jammed somewhere because of how it was closed. Shinpei said someone must have locked the door, and when she turned to ask who it could be, she was more shocked by how easy Shinpei was taking this situation to be. She asked him if he couldn't open this easily, to which Shinpei denied, saying he was still injured. And anyway, he thought this was great timing, so why don't they talk now? Satoko asked him what to talk about, then he asked her to take a seat, and after both of them sat down, Shinpei asked her why she had been in a bad mood lately. Satoko replied she wasn't really in a bad mood. Then Shinpei stated she clearly was, because she has been strange ever since the day she woke up. She apologized to him if that was how he felt. Then Shinpei said he didn't ask so she would apologize. He just wanted to know why, since they would be together from now on. He wanted to know if there was something he should fix about himself. He reminded her of the words she said, about him being okay with anyone as long as they accept him. He asked her if she was mad because of that, and he added that she might be right because after all, the women he have been with have all run away the moment they knew that he was a hitman. Satoko said they don't need to talk about this, but Shinpei made it clear that they do need to talk, and she heard the reason was because Shinpei has always been bad at dealing with both his own and other people's feelings. So, he knew that he might end up hurting her like this in the future, which was why he didn't want to not do anything that could make her sad. He made it clear that she was different from other girls, but he didn't know how to explain it. So, he tried mulling it over and over from the day they met until now. He told her that he liked her eyes, as they were clear and gathered light. They were so beautiful and completely different from his, that made him want to look at them forever, and he wanted them to look at him. He added there were many more reasons behind this feeling, but he doesn't know how to put them into words. So, he said sorry that he couldn't explain things properly and asked her if this reason was not enough. Satoko was wishing he wouldn't look so straight at her, because this was making her really happy, after which Shinpei rested his head on her shoulder, saying he was in love with her and wanted her to stay with him forever. Satoko closed her eyes and she pushed him back gently to say she was sorry. Shinpei asked her why she was apologizing, and Satoko mustered up the courage to tell him that her future had already been decided, and after she goes back home, she should marry the man her father chooses for her. So, she wanted to be honest that she had been lying to him this whole time, since she was kidnapped and didn't know what was going on. So she was desperate for his help back then, and now she was really sorry for lying to him. Shinpei asked simply if this meant they couldn't get married, and after she confirmed they couldn't, Shinpei's expression changed to a lot more serious and pissed off, as he drawed out his sword at her, asking then what were those times they spent together. He asked if those eyes were that of a liar in the end, which means he was fooled. He told her that he couldn't let her live since she knew about his job, and asked her if she was ready for death. Satoko stayed quiet while keeping her head low and apologetic, and Shinpei figured that must mean she was actually scared of him back then, and he guessed that spirit she had when he helped her was also a bluff. But when he raised her head by her cheek, he saw her crying so much while she kept saying sorry for hurting him. After Shinpei looked at that face of hers, something in him felt unsettled, so he jumped above the ceiling and told her that he had no reason to help her anymore. He said farewell to her and jumped down from the window exit from top, with an upset and angry look on his face. However, he returned pretty quickly back to the window and sighed, as he told her that he had no care for women who weren't interested in him, and he would usually just leave. But after seeing her crying like that, I wanted to ask why she was crying. Satoko stayed. She was worried about how she was going to live her life, and she regretted hurting him. Shinpei asked why don't she just marry him then, but she was clear that she couldn't do that. Shinpei figured her kindness was also a lie, and she again repeatedly said sorry to him. Shinpei told her he didn't give a damn about her anymore, but still her crying face made him stay here to ask what was her plan now, and would she be able to survive alone. He asked her if she was sure that he should go, and she stayed silent. Shinpei told her that she could get off this island if she just married him, but Satoko replied that as the eldest daughter of the Kirigaya household, she was born with a duty to marry a man from a good family in order to protect her household. It was because she wanted to repay her father, who had always stayed with her and encouraged her even with her condition. So, it was her dream to protect the Kirigaya household by marrying the man her father wanted for him, which was her reason to live. She doesn't know how long she has, but she wants to keep living until she gets married and makes it happen. That was why she cried while confessing she couldn't marry him for this reason. Shinpei knew she wasn't lying, so out of confusion about how to react, he just lied down on the table and told her to forget it and just do what she wanted to do. Shinpei saw there was no point in him staying with her anymore, yet he was still here for some reason. He told her again they should get married, and he asked her to give him a reason for staying with her. Satoko was honest that she couldn't do that, so she would try looking for a way to get off this island, and she thanked him for everything. She then found a stair inside this place and decided to climb up to the window, while Shinpei felt like he should do something. So, he just agreed to help her and mentioned that they still would have to get married. Satoko was trying to climb while speaking all together, but then the stairs slipped and fell down along with her. But fortunately she was saved by Shinpei, as he told her that he could just kill every man that she would have to marry until she would only have him. He helped her climb the window as he said that she wouldn't have any choice at that point but to marry him once that happens. Satoko let him know that the Kirigeya household had excellent bodyguards, and he couldn't fight them alone and get killed if he tried so. Shinpei wasn't so sure about that, while Satoko told him no matter how much he aided her escape, she would run away from him once she got off the island. Shinpei understood that and he had decided to catch her, which was possible since he ran fast. Satoko was surprised and she asked him if he would really help her again, even though she lied to him, and Shinpei mentioned it would have been better if they could just live together on this island. But Satoko stated they couldn't stay here because she wanted to get out of here. Shinpei figured if that was the case, he would just kidnap her once they got off this island, and he wished her luck to try her best to run away if she didn't like that idea. Satoko began to cry as she felt emotional and thanked him for helping her, and Shinpei wasn't feeling good to see her cry. So, he wiped her tears and told her to stop crying, because he gets really worried when she cries. He didn't care about anything anymore as long as she was by his side. Meanwhile, Ai got called out by Yukari and she asked her if she had seen Shinpei. Ai replied she saw him going to shed with Satoko before, hearing which made her extremely mad as she asked if he went alone with her. Ai confirmed that, which put Yukari into a really pissed off mood as she lost his temper, which was now directed at Satoko, whereas Ai seemed to have plotted something as well which could be guessed by her smirk. After they got outside the shed, there was an awkward silence from Satoko. Then Shinpei asked if she wanted to sleep together. She straight up refused it out loud, after which he went away wishing her good night. Satoko was feeling somewhat relieved to see that he forgave her even if she tricked him and he was still helping her also. She wondered if she should really keep relying on him like this, because she wasn't sure how to return the favor once they got out of here. She had so many things to think about right now, and to think that she would be this happy that he didn't abandon her was unexpected. She kept sitting there lost in her thoughts, while Shinpei was keeping watch over her window from afar. Then he got called out by a guy telling Shinpei peeping into others' windows was pretty nasty. It turned out to be the boss of that gang, Mitsuda, who was the one to hire Shinpei to kill Satoko. Shinpei mentioned it had been long since they met last, and he asked what he wanted. Mitsuda told him that should be pretty obvious after Shinpei killed a lot of his men, and he told Shinpei that he should be running, but he could see Shinpei was in no mood to let anyone find out the young lady. After some time, Satoko was still wide awake in her bed and she couldn't sleep when she heard some sound from her door which she thought was Shinpei. But suddenly, she was surrounded by some hands from her blind spot and Satoko got caught by those three girls. Satoko didn't get why they were here and why they were doing this to her. Then Yukari asked her what she did with Shinpei in the shed. She was frustrated to think Satoko dared to make bold moves at her Shinpei, for which Yukari decided to punish her by sewing her lower lip so she wouldn't misbehave again. Satoko began to shout at them to stop as she didn't do anything, but Yukari refused to believe and said people like Satoko piss her off the most, as she acted all cold just so she could snuggle up to Shinpei. Satoko tried to call for somebody to help, but Sawarabi and Hatsune prepared the needle, and said if she screamed again, they would stab her eye. Satoko thought if these girls were serious, then she noticed their hands seemed to be trembling, as they asked Yukari if they would be really doing this because they would be in deep trouble if they got found out. Yukari told them with dominant expression if they didn't hear her, or they didn't want to thank her for luring customers for them. They replied they were indeed indebted towards her, and Yukari didn't have to worry as they would do this and make sure nobody knows. Yukari stated it was all because they were too nice, that these newbies were getting arrogant, so they actually should have done this right from the start. She gave them thread and ordered them to sew Satoko. Satoko noticed how Yukari was ordering these two around, and they were scared of her, as Yukari told them if they wanted to continue getting her help to get customers or they would rather be on their own, which was impossible with their faces. She mentioned to them that just like how they make fun of AI, Yukari would be making fun of them the same if they don't listen to her. Sawarabi couldn't refuse Yukari's orders. Then Satoko let out a laugh which put the three in discomfort. Yukari asked her what was so funny, to which Satoko said she thought something bad was going to happen to her, but now she was relieved. Yukari told her to repeat again. Then Satoko told Yukari that she should have done this herself instead of ordering these two. Yukari asked if she was saying that Yukari was scared, so she was letting Sawarabi handle this. Then Satoko asked her if she have ever been kidnapped by someone or attacked by a group, while she knew that her experience had made her stronger, so she couldn't keep being protected by Shinpei. She asked them if they have ever been almost killed, and mentioned that those who were serious about exploiting someone weren't like the rest, as they don't hesitate or tremble. Satoko decided to protect herself this time by making these girls fear by her confidence. She asked Sawarabi what she was going to do if people found out about this, and she also added that she once heard the brothel owner lady say that these three often cause trouble and end up in the discipline room. They were called the tortures of the owner lady when she get mad with them, and Satoko stated that recently the owner lady seemed really angry because they wouldn't change their attitude, so this time she might not be able to control herself and end up killing them. Sawarabi really feared this possibility, and Satoko continued saying that owner lady also mentioned it would make things easier for her to manage things if number of prostitutes decrease. Thus, Satoko made them scared by saying it would all be over once she told owner lady Tamaki about them. She asked Sawarabi and Hatsune what they thought, after which she offered them another option to help her instead. They were caught off guard by a sudden request from Satoko, who was their target right now, while she told them they should stop Yukari. Sawarabi asked what she was talking about, then Yukari began to laugh out loud over what Satoko said. She expected she would say something serious, but this was a plain joke to even think these two would listen to her, since their life at this shop would be over if they stand against her. Yukari teased that these two couldn't get customers by themselves, which was why they ended up here after being kicked out from the previous shop. And this place was their last chance, so they had no choice but to live by flattering their superiors. Yukari went and said in their ears that she had been doing all the work for them, which was why they listened to everything she said. Then Satoko called it foolish to think these dumb girls would live and die if Yukari wanted them to. Yukari said she wasn't that crazy, then Satoko quieted her by saying she wasn't asking her, and this attitude of hers got on Yukari's nerves. Whereas, Satoko told them not to entrust their own volition to that kind of person, because this wasn't them living their life anymore. Sawarabi was afraid and uncertain, and Satoko told her that time never waits for them to live, so they must fight and take their life back. Sawarabi seemed to have gained some courage from Satoko's words. Then Yukari said Satoko shouldn't say such cruel things to these poor girls because they were far happier with her around. Satoko asked her if she really thought she was such an amazing prostitute, because in the end she was this shop's second best-selling girl, but she was still losing to a newbie like Satoko. Sawarabi was now losing her temper, whereas Satoko calmly told these girls that if the only way of getting back at her was by force like this, then it means they must be losing. So, she should have just come to Shinpei using her proud tricks if she really wanted him all to herself. However, she seemed afraid because he pushed her away, which was unexpectedly very cowardly of her. And the more cowardly someone was, the more they looked down on the weak and ridiculed them. She also told Yukari that it was because she was like that her beloved Shinpei wouldn't even look at her. Yukari lost her temper now, and she told Satoko if she even understood the situation she was in. She then pulled Sawarabi's hair and asked what she was waiting for. Yukari told her she just had to listen to what Yukari told her to do for the rest of her life. At this point, the stress inside Sawarabi's head piled up so much that she lashed out at Yukari while she was left shocked. She asked her what she was doing and told her to let go of her. Then Sawarabi told Hatsune to not just stand there and do something, and he was useful at least once. Hatsune then helped Sawarabi to catch Yukari, while Yukari called them low-lives and asked if they think they could get away with this. Then Satoko spoke up that she don't seem to understand the situation she was in, as she got up and remarked that she wouldn't feel bad bothering owner lady with her affairs, so she would deal with this herself, as she approached Yukari with the needle and thread while claiming that sewing was her specialty. Meanwhile, Shinpei was alerted after seeing Mitsuda. Then he assured Shinpei that he didn't need to be alerted since he wasn't here to kill him, but instead, he was here to warn him because he seemed to have really taken a liking to that young lady, and he didn't have to go that far with Nidobe. He warned Shinpei that even Nidobe was in a position where they could be at a disadvantage in the future. Shinpei responded that it was on Nidobe himself for making Satoko mad. Then Mitsuda called him a bastard, asking if he actually fell for her. Shinpei asked Mitsuda if he was doubting him for real, and to change the mood, he asked what if he said he did fall for her, as he reached out for his sword. Mitsuda also prepared himself for a fight, But then Shinpei recalled Satoko telling him to stop killing people. Shinpei got calm and he relaxed, which surprised Mitsuda to see him acting so calm. Then Shinpei heard some sounds coming from Satoko's room, and he turned around while telling Mitsuda that he was leaving. Mitsuda tried to ask him why, but Shinpei just ran off ahead without saying anything else, which left Mitsuda really puzzled to see him acting strange like that. And while there were sounds coming from Satoko's room, Shinpei quickly entered the room calling out Satoko if she was okay. But he witnessed a completely unexpected sight of Yukari being held captive by Soarabi and Hatsune, while Satoko seemed to be the one bullying her. Shinpei realized there was nothing to worry about, and Satoko also noticed he was there. She quickly left Yukari, and then when Shinpei asked what was going on, Satoko told him it was nothing. But Shinpei was mad and he asked why those 3 girls were here in Satoko's room. He asked them if they dare try anything while he was away, and he told Yukari that he knew she was up to no good. He also said they must also be the ones who switched Nidobe's drink, hearing which, they were left terrified of what would happen now, as Shinpei figured he should have punished them sooner before this happened. He looked at Yukari with a fierce expression, then Satoko reached her hand out in the middle to stop him and assure him that she was alright. Yukari didn't expect to be saved by Satoko. Then Shinpei mentioned they should at least inform the owner lady of this brothel. Satoko didn't think they had the courage or strength to do this again, so there was no need to report them right now. It was when Yukari couldn't handle it anymore, and she asked Shinpei why he chose her. She told him he was so cruel, because she really liked him and wanted him to at least look at her. Shinpei told her that she had been good to him, for which he was grateful, but all he could think about right now was tearing her to pieces for hurting Satoko. Yukari began to cry out loud, thinking what would happen to her now, while Satoko wasn't sure what was in Shinpei's mind either.